Hey there, and welcome to this little masterclass, mini masterclass, I guess, from Waves Audio on Fiverr.com on this amazing 2-day event that they are putting on for you guys. My name is Michael Pearson-Adams. You can call me MPA because my name is ridiculously long. Not my fault, sorry. Most of the world calls me MPA. I am the Director of Training Development at Waves Audio, and also I'm a Product Manager at Waves Audio. I've also been mixing and recording in the studio professionally since the start of my adult career. Basically, I started as a coffee boy in a recording studio when I was a teenager, worked my way through that into a session musician. I toured with a couple of the biggest bands in the world in the 80s. Then went back to the recording studio, which is where my love is. And I still mix professionally. I still record professionally. But I also have this great position with this great company, Waves Audio. Now, if you're not familiar with Waves, that's totally fine. Waves Audio is a software plugin company. So we create, amongst many things, the plugins that get used in digital audio workstations, post-production in video audio editing suites like DaVinci Resolve, Premiere, etc., Final Cut as well. And we've been doing it longer than pretty much anybody else. We released our first plugin, a plugin which I'm going to be talking about today, by the way, called the Q10, in 1991. Now, I'm going to take a rough stab in the dark that a few of you weren't born in 1991. We, therefore, were the first plugin company to actually have what we call third-party plugins for software. So when we released that Q10, that was for Pro Tools. But if I remember rightly, it wasn't actually called Pro Tools back then. It was called Sound Tools. And it wasn't added. It was DigiDesign. Things change. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be dealing with a studio session, and I'm going to hopefully give you 4 or 5 tips on how not to struggle, how not to dig yourself into a hole as you're adding more layers into your session. And this is regardless of whether you're working in a music session or a post-production session of any kind. A lot of the time when people are starting, what you tend to do is build it up, and you're wondering, why is my master level continually going up? Why is it getting louder? Do I have to bring that up, that vocal up, to get it heard? And suddenly things just start piling on top of each other, and what you end up with is affectionately known in the professional audio industry as mud. You can't tell one thing from another, and it gets a bit confusing, and it gets frustrating. There are a few tricks that we use to make sure that that doesn't happen when we're working professionally. And I want to give you a few of them today. So that's what I'm going to do. The session I'm using is actually a session that I created specifically for this. So you're very special, because I wanted to create a session that had some issues, had some things that could be issues, and show you how to get around them. Now, I needed a singer, so I put up my own hand. So the main male vocalist in this session is me. The female vocalist is actually a sample. I can't remember if it was Splice or Arcade. It was one of those. I love them both. But it has all of these work parts that can be an issue when you're working in any kind of session. Basically, what you need to do is, the first thing you need to do is you need to start thinking of all of these different tracks and instruments. You need to start thinking them as frequencies rather than real identities. These are frequencies. And frequencies can be likened to actors on a stage at a theater production or in a movie. When you're watching a theater production, or even a professional band touring, or a movie, you generally know by the placement of where people are on the stage, roughly how important they are. So if you're watching a theater production and the lead guy is talking, he's usually right up the front. You can track him. He's up the front of the stage. The people who are less important are back in different layers around the stage. And you can tell without thinking too much, okay, this I need to focus on, this one I don't. It's kind of like an effect. It's the same in audio. So when we're actually going through all these different kinds of tracks, you need to make sure that you're giving room to the things that are important and you're dealing with the fillers exactly as you should be by dealing with them as fillers. And you need to make sure that you do so in a way that is organized. And this is also why when you're looking at my session from top to bottom or from left to right, you'll find that there are specific colors floating around and they're very organized. So first thing first, step number one and tip number one, organization, folks. It's all about organization. Whenever I'm working on a session, whether it's mine or somebody else's, regardless of how things are organized, I automatically bring it into my digital audio domain and put it in order so that everything is where I expect it to be and is the color I expect it to be. In this case, drums. Drums are always blue for me. It's my favorite color. I love drums. I would love to play drums. I suck at playing drums, but here we have drums. Drums are blue. And they're all grouped together so that I can put them into a folder and file them away. Pads and electric lead instruments are always yellow for me. And again, I can put them all away. There they are, nicely tucked away. Bass is always green, apart from this one that seems to have gone away from me. So let's just make it green. Wrong green. There we go. Oh, I remember what happened there. So that specific bass was a synth, so it was yellow. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to make it a bass at the last minute, right before I press record. And I forgot to change the color. My bad. So there you go. My basses are green. Let's tuck those away. And then my vocals are always this purpley red. I'm just used to this. It doesn't matter what colors you have, but I strongly, strongly urge you to make sure that whatever colors you choose, just make sure that you stick with them. It's for the same reason that when you walk into your kitchen, you know that when you walk up to a certain drawer, you have expectations of what's inside it. You walk up to another drawer, you have expectations of what's inside it. You walk into somebody else's kitchen and you don't know where anything is. Somebody asks you to make an omelet. You're like, okay, firstly, where do they keep the eggs in the fridge? Actually, eggs are only in the fridge in the States. In Europe and Australia, we keep them on the counter. It's weird, right? The basic is you know your own kitchen. You're always terrible in somebody else's. So we make sure that our kitchen is organized. So that's tip one. Because the whole concept of working in digital audio is not a struggle. You're supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to enjoy the process. Because if you enjoy the process, you're going to be more creative. And guys and girls, we're creative, right? So first, organization. So I have my drums, blue, pads, yellow, bass, green, vocals, purple. Now, essentially, in most kinds of music sections, at least, I can categorize things into those four things. If I'm working on a pop or a rock mix, then there's going to be guitars as well. And there's no guitars in this because this is technically, I guess, progressive house. But again, doesn't matter what genre because it's frequencies, remember? So, but if I had guitars, then guitars would be down here and they would be orange. My guitars are always orange. Okay, so that's step number one. Step number two is working out what's important in your mix. Now, from my perspective, you have to decide, okay, so what is it that is there and I want to be heard the entire time that it's being mixed, or is the priority? So in my session, it's drums and it's vocals. So in this case here, I have my drums at the top, as always, then in vocals, they're still third down. Now, my order is never going to change, but the reason I say work out what's important is because those are the first things that I want to get the levels right on. So I want to start adding the layers of the drums and the vocals to find out how to make them sound good. First things first, though, before I go any further, I'm going to play a bit of the session so you can hear it. I'm going to pull myself off camera. And I'm intentionally not going to expand any of these folders because I guess that's another thing I should mention. You have to get used to not letting your eyes make the decisions on what your brain and your ears are hearing. Okay? It's a thing, trust me. Okay, so I'm going to disappear off camera again. I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to press play. Here we go.
I wish I could turn back time, change your world and make it right for you.
Now let's open up the vocals.
I had too much on my mind, didn't see the pain and darkness you fell into.
All you gotta do is hold on. All you gotta do is
Okay, so that's given you a fair idea of where this track is going, but we haven't actually got to the kicker yet. But the kicker in any dance track you always need. When's it going to kick in? Well, it is going to kick in, trust me. And that's, again, one of those things that you need to learn how to deal with. So first things first. Remember what I said. I said I want to prioritize my vocals and my drums. So again, this makes it really easy when I have them in folders. So I can, for this purpose, I can either solo the drums and the vocals, or I can mute the pads and the bass. So I'm going to mute the pads and the bass. And then I'm going to open up both of these folders. And you'll see that there's actually quite a lot going on. Let's get rid of the mixer for a second. So there's quite a lot going on. Let's squeeze it down just a bit so you can see. Lovely. Okay, so there we have the drums on the screen and the vocals. So there's two areas that you want to make sure that you prioritize and work out the mix, if you want, that can save you a lot of time. First thing is, don't go to the quietest part of the song. Go to one of the busiest parts of the song to make sure that the levels of the important instruments are okay. Now, when you're dealing with vocals and drums, one of the things that you have to make sure that you keep an eye on when you're looking at the levels is that number one, you're looking at them and you're listening to them at the same time. Your eyes can play tricks on you. They can tell you what you're hearing. But you also want to make sure that while you're dealing with those levels, you're looking mostly at the level of the drums and not so much the level of the vocals. The vocal cord has a different set of frequencies to drums. And when you're listening to music low, you want to make sure that the vocals cut through, right? But the drums have a presence. So a lot of the time when you're looking at this visually, you will find that the drums will move the needle further and easier than the vocals. And that's absolutely okay. So the fader that we're going to be looking at is the master fader. Down here on my left-hand side, the camera's reversed. So down here on my left-hand side, and that's the master bus or the master fader, right? Now, you'll notice that I do actually have a plugin on it, but it's not activated. Why? Because I don't like mixing into a process that might mask mistakes or problem areas in my mix. A compressor or an EQ or a limiter, or in this case with this plugin when I show you, all of those things can mask problems if you mix into it. It can kind of like make them go away. But as you start adding more instruments, it's going to create a bigger issue. So I don't like mixing into anything. I just like listening to it occasionally. So you're going to notice my fader's a bit higher than it may be for some of you. You don't get too judgmental on me. It's like I'm trying to keep the levels right in this live stream so that you can actually hear it without being it really, really low. But anyway, there's my master fader. So let's go for the drums first. And I'm going to pick a loop. Let's go this area here. Another kick drum. Okay. So we've got everything there for the quiet part, but we don't have anything for the loud parts. So I'm going to move my loop slightly. The other thing is try and make it a loop that's even. There's nothing more impossibly insane than listening to a couple of loops, beats and like bars and a half, because it puts off your tap, and you're going to tap. So I'm going to go from here. Here's my riser. Now another kick is going to come in. And a snare. Now, take a look on this side. Look at the fader. Look at it going up and down, up and down. Beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to add my vocals.
All you gotta do is hold on.
Notice how in that area you can't see the vocal level as much. You're just seeing the drums. Totally fine. Okay, so now we're going to go to another area, which is where my verse comes in.
Don't focus on the past that you can't change. It's all about the way that you play the game. You know how to yourself in the state you're in. Living in the shadow of what might have been. The weight of your world is weighing heavy on your soul. You're like a stick of...
Okay, that works for me. So while we're there, one of the things which I want to actually go through quickly is there is a ton of effects on that vocal, on both of the vocals actually. So how do you deal with that? It's really, really simple, and I'm going to show you a trick that's going to make half of your troubles at least go away. Okay. So let's move over to, I'm going to pull myself off camera again. Okay, so let's go over to the right-hand side of my mixer, which is where all the buses and effects are. Now here we have two. One is called MPA Verb. That's me for my verb. And then I've got another one here, which is called Vox Effects. So I've got a layer of different things that I'm putting my vocals and the other vocals through. And I'm saving some CPU space by putting both the male and the female vocals. Did you hear that jingle? That was my dog. He just woke up. I'm putting both of them through the same buses so that I can save space on my computer and save power. Okay, so the first load of effects are going through a plugin which, hold on, where is it? It's off screen. There we go. Is Studio Rack. Now, Studio Rack is a free plugin from Waves that is what we call a plugin chainer. And what it does is it lets you create a chain of plugins and save it as a single preset and then move it between any digital audio workstation software or video editing software that takes plugins that you like. Now, one of the things that this comes in really handy for is when it comes to creating an effect. So I'm going to play that last bit of vocal and drums again, and I'm going to turn this off. And then I'm going to turn these other two effects off. Are we ready? Okay, here we go.
Don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all about the way that you play the game. You know how to yourself.
Kind of boring. Okay, so first things first. So I have a reverb going into a delay. So there's my reverb. I'm also EQing my reverb so that the frequencies are kind of like really high. None of the low frequencies that it's reverbing from my voice are there. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. Then we go into my favorite delay, which is called H delay. And this is ping-ponging my voice and her voice, in some cases, between the speakers. It adds interest, but it also kind of like adds to the rhythm as well. So the vocal becomes like, it becomes an instrument, which is effectively what it is. Now, here's the thing that some people get confused about. I'm going from a reverb into a delay into a reverb. And again, same kind of deal on the EQ. And then I'm going into another EQ that I'm doing a low cut or a high pass, and I'm cutting all of the frequencies below 500 because I don't need them. They're not relevant to my vocal or the effects. So this is one of the things that I want to make sure that you're clear on. When you put reverb or a delay on something, any kind of instrument, effectively what you're doing is you're saying, oh my God, I love this instrument. I'm going to repeat it 1,000 times over the next second or two. And if you're using all of the same frequencies that are actually in the instrument that you're putting the reverb or the delay, or in my case, both on, then you're adding mud to your session because you're giving less breathing space for other instruments in the mix because there's only so many frequencies we have to deal with. So one of the things which I make sure I always do is cut all the irrelevant frequencies out of any delay and reverb effect. So I've got a reverb going into a delay, going into a reverb, going into a one-band EQ that's cutting out all the frequencies out that I don't want. And then I've got a compressor, which is kind of bringing up the echo so that it lasts longer. Okay, so if I put this back now and have a listen again.
Don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all about the way that you play the game. You know how to yourself in the state.
Okay, so it's kind of cool because it just stays there. and it's nice. So now let's add the other one. So we've got a mix here. We've got another plugin called Kaleidoscope and another plugin called H Reverb. So let's bring those in as well. And
don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all about the way that you play the game. You know how to yourself in the state you're in.
That works for me because it makes the whole thing more interesting. But none of the frequencies it's really using are used in other instruments at that point in time, so it's not making it muddy. So the lesson here is make sure that you pull all frequencies out of your effects that aren't being used. So don't just put a reverb on a vocal or put a delay on a vocal. Make sure that you're putting one on and then cutting out the frequencies that you don't need, because otherwise you're taking space away from yourself for other instruments that we're going to add. Okay, so we've got the vocals, we've got the drums. What's next, MPA? Well, next would be the bass. Now, this is where tip 2 comes in. Are we at tip 2 or 3? I think we're still at... This would be tip 3, because tip 1 was organization. Tip 2 was making sure that you plan a session accordingly. So you start with your most important features. Tip 3 is making sure that your frequencies are all organized so that you give yourself space. Oh my God, we're on tip 4. How useful am I? So tip 4, stop listening to everything loud. Stop it. Seriously, otherwise I'll come around and I will look at you sternly. When you listen to something loud, it sounds amazing. Everything sounds good loud. The problem is that everything sounds good loud, but it doesn't equate in the reverse, because your ears act a bit like compressors and processing. So the louder you listen to audio, whether you're working in post-production, music, composition of any kind, the less your ears pick up the frequencies that are relevant, right? Now, in this world that we live in, whether we're dealing with music, post-production, TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, YouTube, whatever, we're background noise a lot of the time. We have to deal and compete with everything else that's going on in life. The radio is turned down because people are talking. There's babies crying, there's traffic, there's all these different things going on in life. We have media coming at us a million different ways, and you and me, we are the media. So what we want to make sure is that we are mixing and listening to the content that we're mixing at incredibly low levels, because that way we can actually hear which frequencies work for us and which ones don't, and which ones are dominating and which ones are being swallowed. So in this case here, the next thing I want to add is the bass. So I'm going to close my drums, close my vocals, and bring in my bass. Now I have 3 different basses. Let's unsolo that and unsolo that. Just solo my bass, and I'm going to play my bass so that you can actually hear exactly what's going on. Okay? Here's my bass. Okay, so you'll notice that if you look over here at the left, that's my bass, that I've got an EQ and I've got an EQ. So I've got 2 different 1-band EQs here. So if I just solo the first bass, okay, so I'm on reeds, make sure that the plugins are on reeds. That's going to be my last tip. I'll get to that though. This is exciting stuff. Okay, so I'm going to turn this one off. Hear all those bass notes? So all those bass notes, and I know this might sound really funny and weird and kind of hypocritical and contradictory, but a lot of the time those bass notes, even in a bass, don't do anything for us. They just add mud. So you want to get rid of them. So, I'm going to turn this on. And literally, so what I can do is I can go down and I can literally sweep this frequency back until I find the frequency that... Okay, so I'm going to take that and put it on off auto for a second. So I can sweep this frequency back until I just have the frequencies that I want. So here we go again. And go a bit extreme sometimes. Go a bit far, because that way you'll really hear it. Too far. I think that was about it. Yeah. So from my preference, anything below that frequency, in this case, like the 125 area, anything below 125K is just mud to me. So it's not adding anything. It's not going to give me a clean mix. It's going to just add mud. So I want to get rid of it. So that's one of the things which you'll notice I do a lot in my mixes. If I open up pretty much everything. So if I open up everything right now, pads and all, in problem areas, you will find like the kick has a 1-band EQ. The first pad has a 1-band EQ. The other pad, this one here, has a 10-band EQ. And all of the EQing I'm doing, nearly all of the EQing that I'm doing in this session is all removing frequencies, not adding frequencies. Because what I want to do is I want to remove all the frequencies that are in my way and are being a pain in my butt. So let's just get rid of them, okay? Okay, so let's go back to the bass. Where were we? Back there. Beautiful. Get everything else out of the way. So there's my bass. So that's my first bass. Now my second bass. Now that one, I don't have an EQ on. I also don't have a filter on. So if I add it back again, sounds nearly the same, but where is it? There's one part of this track that's bass 1. Let's make this active. Display filter. There we go. Right over here. So see that? Automation, it's your friend. And it makes it different. When I have these two doubled up together, one has EQ, one doesn't, it just makes it fatter. Okay, we'll get back to that. So there's my second bass. Now I need my third bass. My third bass is this one right here. Let's get rid of pumper for a second. So here's my third bass, right? Let's turn both of these off. That's my third bass right there. Now, without anything, if I add this to the other two, yeah. But, again, you'll see I have a 1-band EQ, but this time I'm cutting the high frequencies. So let me turn that on. Now I have bass, okay? So that's nice. So if I add that works. Because now I have controlled low-end bass, and I've just got two really simple EQs. Now, the other thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to, you can see there's another plugin on here. I'm adding an extra bit of rhythm to this because I don't want it to sound too boring. So I've got this other little plugin here called One Knob Pumper that's literally a one knob plugin that just adds beat. So here we go. Turn it off. Yawn. Much better. Hey, I just noticed, I don't know if you could see, but it's like if you go down to the blue behind me and the blue of mix are nearly the same in my DAW. Crazy. I've been in this room by myself for way too long. Where were we? That's right. So now we've got my bass. Okay. So now let's not record. I don't want to record. So I'm now going to unmute everything, and I'm going to put my drums in. So this same loop here, right here.
Don't focus on the past that you can change.
Now let's add the bass.
It's all about the way that you play the game. You know how to yourself in the state you're in. Living in the shadow of what might have been.
Okay, so here's the important thing. The important thing is when you're looking at this master fader on my right-hand side, it hasn't raised. It's not like it was quiet with drums and then went up a bit with vocals and then went up a bit with the bass. The level is staying where I want it to be because I'm EQing to make sure that things have space. I might start to sound a bit boring, but I can guarantee you that EQ in a reduction way is your friend, people. It is going to help you clean up so much audio just with a high pass and a low pass. Just get rid of the frequencies that you really don't need. So let's, to prove it again, okay? I'm going to get rid of the vocals, get rid of the bass. So let's go back and here. So there's the drums right there. Now let's add in, just to be different, watch that master fader on my right hand side. Let's add in the bass. Okay, now let's add in the vocals.
It's time to take your future out of cruise control. I promise you it's... Don't focus on the past.
My friends, we have a winner. So effectively now what we have is we have a nice cake, top and tail, well, bottom and top for a cake in our kitchen. We're organized, we're cooking with gas, and everything is sounding great. So the next thing, the last thing we need to add, we've got the drums, let's expand those. We've got the bass, let's expand those so we can see them all. You got my through bass, we've got the vocals, and so the next thing we have is the pads, okay? Now, pads, yellows, for me, is everything that is kind of a synth kind of thing. So it's not just pads, it's plucks, but I want to know what's going on, right? So let's have a listen to just this. Okay, so one simple tip for you is if you've got everything grouped, and in Pro Tools you can do folders, Studio One you can do folders, I believe Ableton Live you can do folders and grouping as well, Cubase, all of them have the ability to show groups and let you control things in groups. Use them. Remember, we're talking about making your DAW work for you, not against you. So I'm going to unsolo that, I'm going to mute it for a second, and now I'm going to press play on that loop again.
Don't focus on the past.
And I'm going to bring them in one by one. Sorry, that was bad. Silly me.
Don't focus on the past.
Bring them in one at a time.
It's all about the way that you...
That's my first pad.
You know how to yourself in the state you're in. Living in the shadow.
Okay, now let's bring in the second one.
The weight of your world is weighing heavy on your soul. You're like a stick of dynamite.
So those are my two pads, right?
It's time to take your future out of cruise
Now,
control.
some plucky things.
I promise you it's... Don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all about the way that you play the game.
This one.
You know how to yourself in the state you're in.
So I can bring that up a bit without messing with my level.
The weight of your world is weighing
There's no whale, so we'll get to that in a minute. So now, the build-up pad.
Ready to explode. It's time to take your future out of cruise control. I promise you it's... Don't focus on the past that you...
Okay, so the build-up layer is one of those things that I love to use just to help people work out what's coming next, okay? So, but everything so far is fitting because, again, I'm reducing all the frequencies elsewhere, okay? Now, the last thing is this one right here, the finish chord. This is more of a lead instrument, but it can be a royal pain in the ass. So let's unsolo all of the pads. Okay. Okay. Unmute. Okay.
Don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all about the way that
this one. Ready?
you know how to yourself in the state you're in. Living in the shadow of what might have been. The weight of your world is weighing heavy on your soul.
You let it go.
Stick of dynamite ready to explode. It's time to take your future out of cruise control. I promise you it's worth it more than you will ever know.
All you gotta do is hold on.
Okay. This one. Hear this? Okay. Now, we've got a couple of different plugins on here. Filter is one of them. And I'm actually adjusting it on the go. And then I've also adjusting this one on the go. So both of these, let me turn this back on again. Hear that? It's doing it itself. I love automation. Automation is your friend. Let me go back to this bit for a second. Watch this knob. Okay, so now let's unsolo that and realize why I'm using this. Filtering is the same as EQing. I'm getting rid of stuff that I don't want when I don't want it to make sure that it doesn't get in the way of anything else. And again, you want to be able to set this stuff and forget it and let the DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, work for you, okay? Ready? Okay, so everything unsoloed. Let's have a listen to that part again. Taking into account that we're organized, we've taken out the EQ frequencies that we don't need. We're automating all of the effects, and we're automating these little knobs here as well. So here we go.
All you gotta do is hold on. All you gotta do is hold on.
Hear everything. If you look over here at the master level, you're still where I want it to be, like minus 12-ish.
Don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all about the way that you play the game.
All this stuff going on, and you're still not busting out your levels, and you're still not hearing any mud. And the sole reason for that is EQ. It's getting rid of the stuff that you don't need. And it's one of the first biggest mistakes that I see people make in the studio. And I always want to kind of like go in and fiddle and touch it, but it's like, no, it's not my ball game, it's not my place. But if they ask me, I will kick them out of the chair and go, this is what you're doing wrong, because I love to help. Okay, right. So let's go back to the session. Now, the other thing that we need to do is we need to bring in the master bus compressor. Now, I did tell you that I do have a master bus compressor, and I did tell you that I'm maxing out my levels here so that you can actually hear it in this live stream. So I'm now going to pull it down We're now back at 0. So now when I press play, the plugin's still not on. You're going to hear it's going to be a bit quieter. Yeah, I'm on 0 dB.
All you gotta do is hold on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I have this plugin open. This is one of my favorite channel strip-like master bus compressors. This is a model of an actual mastering console at Abbey Road Studios in London. Yet this one comes with a twist that gives you more than they do, which is the ability to move things around in the chain so that you can actually decide what's first, your EQ, your compression, your limiting, or your filters. In this case here, I like to utilize presets as much as I can. Now, the preset which I'm using today is from my friend Dave Darlington. Pardon me. And it's called Pop Midside Widener. So I'm going to do that. And you'll see the makeup gain is kind of crazy. So I'm going to pull the makeup gain back down to 0. One of the most important things for me with something on my master bus is I don't want, suddenly I put a plugin on my master bus and everything in your session sounds completely different. If that happens, people, you're doing something wrong in the session. Remember, I said earlier on, I don't like mixing into a plugin because I don't want it to mask any problems. But when I do put something on the master bus, I want it to make a difference and I want it to fix what I want it to fix. In this case, what I want it to do is I want it to glue it together for me, right? But I also want to spread it out a bit. So, first of all, let's go to a busy part of the song again. So let's loop this bit again, okay?
Don't focus on the past that you can change. It's all
Okay, so we did jump in level a bit.
you know how to yourself in the state
Not much, more perceived to level.
what might have
And also, if you look at the mastered level, when I kick in the compressor, you'll see what we call attenuation right here where my mouse is. Here we go.
control. I promise
Little orange line.
you will never
All you gotta
Now,
do is hold on.
that's actually compressing a bit more than I really want it to.
it's all
So, and you can see here where my mouse is now, that's my gain reduction.
in the state.
Bit much.
Living in the shadow
Okay.
what might have been. The weight of your world is weighing heavy.
I want it to glue my mix together. I don't want it to
Ready to
too much.
it's
I
time
want it to be about the...
out of cruise control. I promise you it's worth it more than you will ever.
Okay. So now, let's...
Hold on.
Don't focus on the past that you
Now, listen to the music and listen to the vocal and listen to how this one process glues it together.
living in the shadow of what might have been. The weight of your world
So let's unloop and listen to that now, how it just sits so much nicer when it all breaks down and it goes back to the girl.
control. I promise you it's worth it more than you will ever know.
All you gotta do is hold on.
You know what? I actually think I'm gonna publish this song. I actually like this song. I made this song for you guys, but I think I'm gonna publish it. I like it. I called it Monday Morning because I started it on Monday morning for this event. I think I'm gonna publish this. So look out for this. I like it. Okay. So now we have a session that has not been a struggle. First thing we did was we took all of our tracks and we organized them properly. The way I do it is drums, pads, bass, vocals in that order. You do you, but make sure that you organize your sessions in such a way that it's not a struggle. Second thing, I color-coded everything. My drums are always blue. My pads are always yellow. My guitars, there are none in this session, but they're always orange. I know that. And I always make sure that I put anything I'm working with, whether it's from a client or for myself, in that order so that it works for me. And then the other thing which I do is I use EQ a lot to get rid of all the frequencies that I don't need. And usually I keep it simple, people, and I'll use a one-band EQ to either cut out the lowest frequencies that I don't need or cut out some of the higher frequencies that I don't want as well. So there we have a few tips that hopefully will make your lives easier the next time you're mixing something. Now, this works exactly the same regardless of whether you're mixing Foley and dialogue for a vlog or whether you're mixing music of any kind. It all comes down to frequencies and how you deal with those frequencies. But nothing is going to work as easily as you want it to if you don't organize it properly. So hopefully with those tips, when you go into your next session, you can use some of those and your life will be easier. I hope you're safe. I hope you're healthy. I hope your family is healthy. This has been Michael Pearson-Adams from Waves Audio. You can call me MPA. I really, truly hope your mixes are happy ones. Take care.